Monday, January 31st, 2022. The time is 6 p.m., and this special meeting of the Romulus Community Schools Board of Education is called to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Wester. Terrell. Kennard. Piles.
Present.
Evans. Bergeron is excused. German is not attending.
We have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Those who are joining us tonight, if anyone has public comments and would like to address the board, please fill out a form and turn it into Secretary Evans. And we will move into the public comments portion of the agenda at this time. Yes. You have one. Does anyone else wish to address the board tonight? Here comes another one. I think Ms. Hampton's bringing another form, and there's somebody who raised their hand. Yeah. We moved it up to the beginning because people want to speak before action. Do you want to go ahead?
Has everyone turned in? Oh, Ms. Bales is filling one out.
I saw somebody out in the parking lot, Stu.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I didn't expect you to be this quick.
no problem.
Give me a minute to catch my breath.
You can start.
Okay, first, Rita Hampton.
I want to know, am I on? Can you hear me? You can, whenever you see me here, I'm a taxpayer. I can go anywhere I want to on this campus. You don't have to ask your friends or ask me, what am I doing here? Just ask me, especially if I'm 2 feet in front of you. Don't be scared. Just ask me. I also want to say that anything that's said after that is a lie. Okay, now, I want to talk about $40,000 a month, how much we're paying interim superintendent. One superintendent hired in September hasn't done nothing to this day. I haven't seen nothing extraordinary. What do you do with $6,000 a day or a week? What do you have to do for that? That's my question. This library should be in use. I'm a librarian, state certified, a media specialist, they call it. And this library looks like hell. That's what $40,000 can do. It can become the state-of-the-art library. And this is not. I see a book back there, How to Grow Shrubbery. Outdated, has not been weeded. Books are dusty. I wonder why we paying all these people this exorbitant amount of money. And what do they do? Interesting fact. I had somebody rush to sign a petition. They were from Highland Park. You know what they said to me? I come here to sign because Dr. Weatherspoon was at our school, and he effed it up. That's all I have to say.
Emily Matron.
Good evening, everybody. I am Emily Maturin. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Hale Creek Elementary. I'm just up here today to talk about the honestly absurd amount of money that is being spent on an interim superintendent. $1,200 a day is more than a new teacher, such as myself, makes in 2 weeks of work. Especially after the majority of the community has been pleading and begging for us to bring back Dr. Edmondson. It seems absolutely ridiculous. It's the exact opposite of what the majority of the community is asking for, as well as teachers and staff members and students. When you're elected to serve the people, right? Not just yourself. You're supposed to serve what the majority of the people want, and it's very disappointing. It is just disheartening to be here every single time. I honestly am not even sure exactly what to say since we were kind of rushed into public comment. We're not used to having it at the beginning, but that's kind of what we've been talking about. It is the community and the school district is falling apart due to the majority of the board's decisions, and when we only have 3 people who are currently and have been since the very beginning on this board fighting for what the majority of the people want and what's best for our kids.
Carol Bales.
Hi there. If I should exceed my 3 minutes, could you just extend me the courtesy to complete my concerns? I would appreciate it very much before you start timing me. First, as you on the board know, I have appeared before you several times over the past 6 months, questioning the financial status of the district and solvency. In addition, my husband and I have had 2 meetings with Mr. Dixon, the last of which Mr. McNatt and Mrs. Evetts attended. And these concerns were left unanswered due to the alleged state of financial affairs. To date, we are still having state aid withheld due to lack of audit completion. But yet, I look at the agenda this evening and see there are action items for costly amounts without having a detailed financial report and audit report as to our financial status. I understand we're supposed to get one at the end of February. We have not seen a detailed PowerPoint or spreadsheet since Dr. Sovey and Jewel Clear left and since the arrival of Mr. Dixon in August. I believe these items should be held in abeyance until we hear from our auditors and Shelby Freyer as to our financial status. We have not had an assistant superintendent in our district since the late 70s. Your action item doesn't even state a superintendent of what, and has payment rate of $734 daily. This will cost the taxpayers approximately $80,000 for 6 months. Where are we getting the money? In one breath, you tell us, Madam President, that we are in a crucial financial state, and then approve new financial action items to be placed on the agenda. You are taking contradictory actions. I am totally confused. Integrity and transparency are being lost with the community. Excuse me just a minute, I'm a little nervous. I don't know why. Second, I was actively involved in the campaign committee of the sinking fund, and mostly all the millages of renewals in the past 52 years in this community. The possibility of selling bonds and accruing interest was never mentioned to the residents. It was understood that we would use these 3 mills for a period of 10 years, 2018 to 2027, for the purchase of real estate sites for and the construction or repair of school buildings, for school security improvements, for the acquisition or upgrading of technology, and other purposes as authorized by law. The estimate of this revenue for the school district was estimated at $2.3 million in 2018, and it's probably more today. Who would manage this money, these bonds? I would like to be extended the courtesy, Madam President, and be afforded the opportunity to ask questions following and or at the time of presentation this evening, if possible. We need to restore integrity and transparency to the community. Third, we have ample money from our ESSER funds and additional monies from the state. Could the board reopen contracts and give employees an off-schedule bonus to lift employee morale? It is being done in other districts and would not affect our general fund. Employees are still not whole since 10% payouts, and we need on keeping our employees long-term with competitive wages. I just want to say, in closing, I won't finish saying it all. My husband and I would be more than happy to meet with you, Dr. Witherspoon, to address our concerns once again. I thank you for your time and would appreciate a response to my concerns. I will bring my other items. I will send them to you in writing.
Mike Hanson.
Good evening. I'm Mike Hanson. I'm the Secretary-Treasurer of the Rhineland Education Association. I've been employed through this district. This is my 23rd year. Ms. Piles, in the past, you have consistently said in open meetings that you are worried we won't make payroll. In addition, you repeatedly have questioned prior with Central Office Administration, wanting to know how other districts similar in our size to Romulus staff their central office. I want to know what other districts similar to ours have 2 superintendents making roughly $2,000 a day. Second question we want to know, when will the audit be complete? Our members want to know, and they're very worried, will they get a paycheck at the end of this month? That all should be addressed by this body. Last, is there an attendance policy for the school board? We've noticed that there's certain members that kind of come and go and show up and kind of choose when they want to show. What is the attendance policy of this board? Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from January 24th, 2022 regular meeting. Is there a motion?
Madam President, move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of January 24th, 2022 Board of Education meeting. Rationale, we are seeking approval for the presented meeting minutes.
Can you guys use your microphones, please?
Moved by Kennard to approve the minutes from January 24th, 2022. Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Evans. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, on the agenda, there's an action item to authorize the sale of property at 35408 Beverly Road. Is there a motion?
Madam Secretary, move that the Board of Education approve the presented resolution to sell property owned by the district located at 35408 Beverly Road, Romulus, Michigan, to the purchaser, Sammy Alfasi, for an amount of $205,000. The board authorizes and directs the interim superintendent, Dr. Don Witherspoon, or designee to execute that purchase agreement. Rationale, property was approved for sale in October of 2021 for $220,000. November 8th, 2021, the board rejected an offer of $170,000. Soon after, an offer was received for $200,000 and is communicated to the realtor to ask the client for more. Thus, just the offer of $205,000.
Moved by Evans. Is there support?
Support, Kennard.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we have an action item, naming of law firm Delaport Law. Is there a motion?
Madam Secretary, move that the Board of Education authorizes Delaport Law as an RCS law firm until our next organizational meeting in July 2022, removing Keller Toma Law Firm from our list of authorized law firms for the remainder of this time as named at our July 12, 2021 organizational meeting. Rationale, Delaport Law PLLC offered services including school law with an office in Mason, Michigan. Budget implications are general fund.
Moved by Evans. Is there support?
Support, Kennard.
Are there any questions?
Madam President, why are we changing before the end of the term?
I'm sorry.
Why are we changing? What is the reason, rationale for? Why are we changing? Why?
I have some confidential work that needs to be done by this law firm. We have not used the other law firm, and when the work is done, I will be presenting that along with the district's attorney, Mr. Schindler, and Mr. Delaport to the board.
You said confidential?
That's correct.
So confidential in that you're not able to share it with the board, or is it something that has to be, I'm not understanding.
It's for the safety of students. The issue that, some of the issues that I'm going to be having to look at.
I'm sorry, I'm just not understanding how we're going to change a law firm mid-year without any type of conversation prior to this date. This is one of those transparency, communication backdoors that I always say. Everybody wants to be on the same page, but there's a lot of deals and talks going on behind closed doors that we don't get till we get to the table. I mean, we're saying confidential, we're saying it's about school safety. We still should be having some type of conversation to figure out what's going on, because this is a surprise with no, the rationale to me offers services which include school law with an office in Mason, Michigan. That's not a rationale. You're telling me where they're located. I don't understand, Dr. Witherspoon. You need to give me something. I don't understand this.
Thank
Test.
Thank you for your question. I want to reiterate this involves student safety issues, and for the protection of all parties involved, I have to keep it confidential at this time, and until the results of an investigation in terms of what I know the specialty of this law firm is, because I've worked with this law firm in another environment. I asked the board to support this recommendation until such time as we bring a report to you based on the results of the investigation.
Thank you.
I have a question. Do you know how long this information is going to take before it comes before the board?
In one instance, the investigation should take about 2 weeks. And the other one, I don't know.
Okay.
But this states that we're gonna have them until July 22, when we do our organizational meeting.
That is the range of time, but I suspect this will be done within 45 days.
But then, so at that point, it's done in 45 days. Now we gotta go back and see if even Keller Toma even wants to come back. We're,
Then in 45 days, we have to go back and see if Keller Toma even wants to come back.
I probably won't use any more attorneys than what are approved, and then we'll start reducing the number of firms we're using.
I mean, we're already using firms and attorneys that we didn't vote on in our organizational meeting. We have so many, you go back and pull the register, you can see we've had attorney so-and-so from whoever's office and other attorneys that we never even voted on to do people's dirty work. We got so much money going out in legal fees, and I'm sorry, you're walking into it. It's just, like I say, it's, to me, and I may be the only one, but it does not seem kosher to sit here and change in the middle, and I understand you have an investigation, but Keller Toma can't do it, who we have on retainer.
I have one question, Dr. Weatherspoon. You said student safety, and this is someone, I know we're not familiar with this firm. When you talk about student safety, and you said that you know from working with them that this is an area of their expertise, do you feel that if we don't go with this firm for whatever this is, that student safety could or would be compromised?
Yes.
I got 3 more questions. Hourly rate, and, well, 2. Hourly rate and what the cap is.
I heard the hourly rate. What was the second part?
The cap, the max that we're gonna spend.
I don't know what the hourly rate is in terms of the work that has to be done, and I'll tell you why. If we have to dig into some records, the cost will go up.
I mean, everybody has an hourly rate. Is it $250 an hour? Is it $150 an hour? Is it $300 an hour? Is there additional for paralegals that come in and assist? So we know what an hourly rate is.
I do know what an hourly rate is, and depending on what the first brush of the information that has to be reviewed will determine whether or not additional support like a paralegal will be brought in. For example, just for the sake of discussion, if I have to go through paper review, that attorney won't do it, a paralegal will do it, because they'll be looking for something specific. If, for example, we have to go through phone records,
Understandable, but
then we may have to buy extra.
but the question is the rate. What is the hourly rate? At the end of the day,
I don't have the hourly rate off the top of my head.
so they don't know what they charge an hour?
Well, it's not $500 an hour, I tell you that, but I don't.
There still is, what we're supposed to know what the base hourly rate is. And I do understand, okay, if it is going through a phone record, no, the attorney is not gonna do it, a paralegal is gonna do it. Their hourly rate is probably at a regular hourly rate. But we know that an attorney's fee They charge by the hour. If it's $200 an hour, $250 an hour. That's the main question is what is the hourly rate?
I will have that for you in 24 hours.
So we're gonna table this there.
Madam President, if I may, please.
Ms. Rowe.
Okay. As Mrs. Wester said, the district has been through, this district, this community, our stakeholders have gone through a lot. And as you heard when you came in, there is a mistrust, lack of transparency. And I understand when you say confidential, but we have experienced that over the last 6 months above and beyond. And then we find out on the back end. If it's concerning a student, a closed session would be in order, I would think. We need to know more. And again, we need to know more, even as she's just highlighted, the cost. We can't present, I don't know, and 24 hours. That's not how we're able to vote, just based on I'm doing that. So I appreciate you.
No, thank you for the question. And I'm sorry I don't have the tip of my tongue the hourly rate, but I'm not going to disclose the nature of the work that has to be done. There's too many things, too many variables that have to be addressed, and we'll bring it to you, but I'm not going to compromise the student, anybody else is involved.
I would just like to say that normally when these types of requests come before the board, there's usually information pertaining to the nature at hand. And so I would like for you, Dr. Witherspoon, that you provide that with us so that we can have additional information pertaining to the law firm. I think this is one that we have not utilized or probably aware of what they call. Each law firm has a rate schedule and the type of services that they offer. That would be very helpful with us in making a determination. And I do understand, as my fellow trustees have said, that pertaining to confidentiality nature and that sort of whatever, but in bringing this to us, if you could get additional information to support the knowledge base of this firm and their rate schedule, it'll be more helpful.
Thank you, Vice President Kadard. Ms. Evans, you made the motion. It's up to you if you want to withdraw or if you want to vote.
I think that if we withdraw, so help me understand this. If we withdraw the motion at the next meeting, if we have the supporting documentation, then we bring it back to the table.
It will go back on the agenda.
As opposed to voting and failing, then it would not come back. Okay, so I will withdraw I'm sorry, Dr. Witherspoon.
I'm sorry. There's a request to vote on the motion.
Vote on the motion.
So the motion is to authorize Delaporte Law as a district firm. It was moved by Evans, supported by Kennard. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay.
Motion fails. Next, we have an action item, an RFP, Leadership That Listens. Is there a motion?
Recommended motion, move that the Board of Education award the RFP/Leadership That Listens contract for projects and actions identified to, who are we putting it to? And that the project would not exceed, this is not filled out.
You have here.
Yeah. Move that the Board of Education award the RFP Leadership That Listens contract for project actions identified in the KSK consultancy for a project amount not to exceed $107,200. The rationale presented is the request for proposal for the Leadership That Listens. This RFP has a deadline of Friday, January 28th, 2022 at 4 p.m. for submissions. A recommendation on the bid award and contract will be provided after the close of the date. So the rationale is as follows. Romulus Community Schools has experienced several leadership changes in recent years. With each change in leadership, the district has experienced shifts in several key areas of the organization, and not surprising, communication challenges have occurred. The COVID-19 pandemic has served to magnify divisions and has also clouded the district's internal and external confidence and trust. Romulus Community Schools posted requests for proposals for independent consultation services to work with the interim superintendent and team to help lead a restart for communication and for establishing an informed, transparent, and responsive plan for district-wide improvements serving all students. We posted a request for proposals for listening to learn. We received one response. Budget implications would be from general fund. Exhibits is the RFP, Leadership That Listens, and the KSK consultancy proposal.
Moved by Wester. Is there support?
Support, Kennard.
Supported by Kennard. The floor is open if there are any questions. Seeing none.
Once again, we go back to one of the questions that we have from our public comment. We were talking about the solvency of the district. Now we're talking about spending more money. We don't know what the results of the audit is. So it was also asked, are we going to meet payroll? The question has been stated, there's been a statement from this board stating that we don't know if we're going to be able to survive. And we want to pay $107,000. That's not making sense to me. I need clarity. It doesn't make any sense to put out money when we couldn't do it, when we needed to for our staff, to pay our bus drivers and our custodians. But we want to pay $107,000 to say to bring the district back together again. It starts here with transparency and communication.
Madam President, there are two things that I can address. The mic doesn't work. Does it work now? All right. Okay. The first question is, where is the money and what is the financial status of the district? And where is the audit? Part one of the audit has been completed. The state aid has not been released. Based on the part of the audit that has been completed, the consultant has added $1.2 million to the fund balance for the district. As far as the fear of payless paydays, what we said last week still holds. We are able to meet our payrolls through the end of February and probably into the middle of March. Ms. Fryer is working with the Department of Education to release our general fund money, or state aid money, going back to November of 2021. And that is what she's doing is working with the Department of Education to make certain that we have met all of the audit requirements and that the timing of the release of that money can be before the 20th of February, which is a normal date that state aid is released. So we're confident that the money will be forthcoming, and the audit letter that she sent to the auditors should be in your packet. If it's not, we'll provide it to you. Second thing, we're trying to expedite, with the help of Wayne Risa, our application for ESSER money, Title I money, special ed, and any other grant that we have. We have to have a budget with the appropriate account numbers, etc., before any money can be expended. That also includes the fact that we have to submit a plan that's approved. So the money is waiting for the district, but those two other components have to be met before the funds can be expended. So it's not as if we don't have money in the wings waiting. It's what we have to do in terms of central office meeting that requirement. Central office imploded several months ago. So we are scraping by as best we can to put the information together, gather the data, and meet the requirements both at the county level and at the state level. Does that answer part one about the money? Okay. The second question you asked is about how can you afford $107,000 for what I call listening to learn. I did hear the questions that were raised about transparency and about the lack of input into how the board functions, what the community has to say, how the teachers have to say, and how students have to say. This is the most cost-effective way of collecting that data and feeding it into our budget building cycle, which will begin in March. So the listening circles will begin as quickly as the vendor can pull together the resources. When I say the resources, meaning the number of people in the district who will be identified and be members of the participating groups. That group includes about 50 listening groups that will include the community, school, all school personnel, meaning all levels of school personnel, and students. And the data will be collected and brought back to us to share as we begin to develop priorities for the next fiscal year. And it is an investment in yourself. And let's talk about, just for a second, what's happening to the enrollment in our district. The district is now at about 2,470 students. The loss of students over the past several years from about 2,700 students to where we are today puts us in a very precarious position. As students leave the district, the fund equity also becomes at risk because we don't have it. Our costs either remain the same or go up. Our buildings are at less than 50% capacity, particularly in this building and in the middle school. And unless we come up with an investment in ourselves, meaning the district, as it relates to the community, and we can put forth a better approach, a more informed approach, and a more trusted approach to putting forth a budget that the board can then adopt a plan and place funding against that plan. You won't, unless you do that, there is no accountability. There is no budget that will be a true budget. We must stem the tide of the departure of students for whatever reason. You need to know what those reasons are. And with that, Madam Chair, if Dr. Krantz would like to add to the listening circles, please ask her to join us.
Dr. Krantz, thank you for being with us, first of all, tonight. If you would please come up to the podium, and any board members that have questions, you may ask them directly.
Good evening.
Evening. I have a question. We've been
Yes.
faced with declining enrollment, high turnover of staff, divisions, and a lack of trust, broken trust, and now a lack of willingness to rebuild the trust. How would this, if at all, benefit Romulus Community Schools to improve those areas?
I'm going to be very frank, and I'm going to be very polite, and I'm going to be honest about why I'm here. I feel the audience, and I feel the concern that they have, and I feel badly for all parties. I have spent my entire career, over 34 years, in public schools. As a building principal, as a teacher, elementary teacher, as an interim superintendent, as a curriculum director for over 20 years in 4 different districts. My strength is bringing people together to listen to one another in the most difficult times. I've been appointed an interim superintendent in a district that was losing enrollment, and I helped lead a very successful superintendent search. That's not why I'm here, though. But I understand when things can start to go wrong and trust can be fragile. So I bring my whole heart and soul to help a district. Listen to everyone. I've conducted listening events a number of times. I can tell you that they are always worthwhile. They are always insightful, and I believe that the information that could be gleaned from your young students, to your high school students, to your alternative high school, to all your staff, at every level, in every facet of your district, that some wonderful insights could be gained, and you could use those insights that I will disaggregate and put forth to you periodically across the next 5 months. And I think it would allow you to have a foundation to begin with the next superintendent. That would be, I'm not biased. I just bring a spirit of goodwill and a spirit of true support to help us do this hard work.
Thank you. there any other questions?
I appreciate your comments. The problem is, and I don't take on, I don't like to approach in a negative way. The problem is, I would say at this point, probably 100 different people have come before this board, stated their concerns, parents, teachers, board members, and it was not heard. I think at this point, it's premature because we don't have a permanent leader for the district. I don't believe that it's possible to build on something that's been torn down month after month, 2-3 times within in a month, and no transparency, that we can spend this type of money and be able to come out with a different mindset. Once you've had broken trust, sometimes it can be built back on. And speaking from relationships, a very good friend, a colleague, once you've had that broken trust and literally had people to come before you and beg and implore and humbly ask detailed questions and not be able to receive a transparent answer. We're not at that place right now.
I appreciate that, and I saw the RFP, and I knew that I wanted to go for it because it is what I do best. But the amount that was put forward is a monthly retainer, and I would not want to do the work if I wasn't going to receive some compensation. But it isn't asking for that money up front. It is asking for a retainer to then move forward in good faith with a monthly payment. And depending upon the number of people to facilitate the circles, that is invoiced at the end of each month. So you would always know what is coming ahead. And I built into the proposal routine oral feedback to the board as well as written. And I am, obviously I would like to bring my services here, but listening circles only work if people have an interest in going to an event and listening to one another. And I do say that from my experience, you are missing some people who aren't speaking. I say this generally because some people are very afraid to come to a board meeting. So these are, by design, protocols to allow for open listening. There's no back and forth dialogue. It's prompted question, and every single person has an equal amount of time to speak. So I do suggest to you that you know the 80-20 rule. 20% of the accidents occur, or 80% of the accidents occur by 20% of the people. I don't know if you have a true understanding of your community and all of your teachers, all of your bus drivers, food service workers, everybody, as to where they really are in their thoughts about the last handful of years. And that I just know that I would do my very best for you. And that's all I can say is that I did put a lot of time into thinking about this. I researched your district. I looked at a number of things, and I believe I could help you make a positive difference. And that's all I have.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor, an action item to enter into leadership that listens, made by Wester, supported by, I'm sorry, was it Kennard? Yes. Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion fails. Next, we have a sinking fund analysis discussion. Dr. Weatherspoon, the floor is yours, and Bill Roach, and please take the podium.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, you have a sinking fund that is that was passed, and you have a 10-year span for collecting money. What Mr. Roach is going to present to you is the advantages of bonding that money now and getting the projects that are in need to be addressed now. So you can show progress on what has to be done in the district, and perhaps realigning some of the priorities that have surfaced over the last year. Not to say that you're not going to do what you promised the people, but you're going to assure the voters that the projects are done, they can see them, and you're getting your money's worth for what you, at today's prices, as opposed to inflated prices. So with that, Madam President, Mr. Roach is at the podium.
Thank
Good
you.
evening. Can you hear me all right? Yes. All right. We were asked a question whether or not it would be possible to bond against the voted sinking fund. And yes, it is. It's not uncommon for a school district to vote a sinking fund to pay for projects, but many times the money generated isn't sufficient to do all the project at one time. Very common, say you might have to do a roof replacement, but you can't replace a fifth or a quarter of the roof every year. It's not very practical. But by bonding, you can do the entire roof at one time and then just pay that off over the life of the remaining sinking fund issue. So what we wanted to do was prepare some general information to you and give you some ideas as to what your options would be if it was something you wanted to pursue. So you do have a sinking fund. You have 3 mills that you're levying. In the summary that you received, we estimated what that would generate on a cash basis over the remaining 6 years of the issue. So it would generate roughly $3.3 million a year based on your current taxable value. And then what we did, we looked at 3 different scenarios. Based on that dollar amount of cash, how much could you borrow to do projects today? So if there were immediate priorities that the district had, if there were security issues, health and safety issues, boilers that needed to be replaced, but you weren't going to get enough money out of that sinking fund this year to do it all, you could bond for it and get all those projects done right now. And on the left of the first page is a summary of the rough estimate of what you could get to do cash projects today. If you wanted to use 100% of the sinking fund levy to bond against, you'd get about $19.3 million in a construction fund to do projects now. Now, we have not sat down with your facilities people. We don't know what your needs are. But the idea was we're just showing you the rough numbers that are available to you for your options if it's something that you wanted to pursue. So if you used 100% of the sinking funds, you'd get about 19.3 million now to do those projects. If you only wanted to use 75% of the sinking fund millage, and then you would still have cash available for pay-as-you-go projects, it would get about $14.4 million in a construction account for you now. And then if you wanted to look at using only 50% of the sinking fund millage, it would get you roughly $9.6 million in a construction fund. So we haven't gone through, we haven't prioritized, because I'm not a construction person, we're the numbers and the bond guy. So the question would be, what are your facilities needs? What are those immediate needs? Are there roof repairs that need to be done? So this would be something that would be sat down with your facilities people and your staff to go through and prioritize, okay, if this option is available, is it something we want to look at? And what are those immediate needs that you want to get done? If you asked me my humble opinion, I probably wouldn't look at using 100% of your sinking fund, because there's always a need to do projects on a pay-as-you-go basis that come up in a year or two that you're not anticipating. So you're probably looking in just 50 to 75%. But once again, that's going to be predicated upon your facilities needs. If you don't have a need immediately to do $14.5 million worth of construction, then we can work within any of those parameters. But this is to give you an idea of what your options are. Now, you may ask, Bill, is the district going to be able to sell bonds given your current situation? Well, those are some things that are going to need to be cleaned up. Currently, the district does not have qualified status with Department of Treasury to issue bonds because the audit has not been filed yet. And that is something Treasury will not waive. So ultimately, we would like to have an audit in place. We would have to go to Treasury and file what is known as a long form application to get Department of Treasury approval to issue bonds. So it would take some time. There's some homework that would have to be done ahead of time. But if it's something that you believe there may be a need to make facilities improvements now, as opposed to waiting and doing it piecemeal over the next 6 years, then the answer is yes. The district could get funds to do projects now to fill immediate needs. And these are just ideas, give you a rough idea of how much cash you could generate through that sinking fund. Just to let you know, the projects that you do, once again, this would be paid for by the revenues generated by the sinking fund levied annually. We can only fund projects that are allowed to be done under the sinking fund statute. So if it's not allowed under the statute, it's got to come off the paper. It can't be done. But we would go through that with your facilities attorney and the bond attorney. Eventually, if it's something that you wanted to pursue, we'd have to go through and prioritize the projects and make sure they all qualified under the sinking fund. And with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. My associate here, Steve's the numbers guy. To give you an idea, interest rates are still low. It would only go out 6 years. Your final levy on the sinking fund, I believe, if we did our math correct, would be July of 2027. So you would collect the taxes between July and 2027, and your final payment on the bond issue would be May of 2028. So the bonds are all paid off before the sinking fund would end up either expiring or being revoted in what other way, shape, or form down the road.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members or anything that you would like to add, Dr. Weatherspoon?
Is there a some form of what's the word? A study group or study session that we could have? Because I would like to know the differences. Honestly, I am offering. I'm at a position where I'm limited in my understanding. I want to know more about what it is that you're proposing. And I want to know if the differences in going this route as opposed to applying for grants, using some of the ESSER funds that might be available, that the district might be able to receive? How does that balance out? What are the advantages of what you're speaking of? And what are some of the disadvantages? Would it be based on the economy as it is now, or what are some of the risks, is the word that I'm looking for, that we might face if we were to go some of the through the way that you're presenting right now?
Well, it's in general, it would be really predicated based on the need. The normal process would be, obviously we're not asking you to make any decisions tonight, the normal process would be to have a working group, as you indicated, to sit down with your facilities people, go over their capital improvement needs list, along with the superintendent and your finance person, and come back to the board with a different, sort of a detailed list of options. Here's the projects that, and I'm assuming your facilities people have projects that they would like to get done. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know. But we'd have to sit down with that as a group and look at what your needs are, and then put together a little bit more detailed plan based on your specific facility needs. So that would be sort of step one, to put together those options with your facilities people, with the superintendent and your finance officer, in order to come back to the board with a little bit more detailed information. This is all just a very big, broad overview tonight. So it's, do you want to go to that next step, which is having a meeting with your staff, facilities, finance, and superintendent to put together a little bit more detailed information for the board to review?
Yes, I think that would be feasible for the board because we haven't had detailed information pertaining to the sinking fund down to that level in terms of what our district needs are. It's been about maybe a year and a half to 2 years now. The last time, I think it was in 19, in terms of where we are with what we've utilized and what our needs are moving forward. I know there was study sessions and projects that was on the table. We haven't revisited to see where we are. And then I agree with my trustee that what exactly the bonds versus, how we've been doing business and what does that mean? And so I think some form of clarification and planning and session and so forth in terms we need to hear from our administrators in terms of where we're going and have some buy-in and input.
I think your facilities person is going to have more.
Yeah, he will have that. Yes, he would. He's over there. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
He's the individual who rely on that.
Right.
Yes.
And just so you know, just like your sinking fund that you're doing on a pay-as-you-go basis, all these expenditures from this, it is deposited into a separate construction account. It's monitored and it will be audited by the Michigan Department of Treasury to make sure that all the expenditures for capital improvements meet the statutory requirements for the sinking fund. Just like your annual expenditures are subject to audit by Michigan Department of Treasury to make sure they meet those specifications. So it's not a downside. You have the same liability to make sure that, Treasury, everything we do has to be in requirements with the statutory requirements for the sinking fund expenditures, whether you do it pay-as-you-go or whether you do it up front. And the advantages and disadvantages, it's really predicated upon whether or not you have a need to do things up front, or if you don't, you can save the interest cost and you can pay for the projects on a pay-as-you-go basis. The downside, if you do the bond, you're going to pay a little bit of interest. Interest rates are still low. We had budgeted, about 1.6% as an estimated. So you are going to pay some interest on this over the next 6 years. But it's really determined upon the facility side. Do we need these improvements? Is it better to do it now, or is it impractical, to do it on a pay-as-you-go? If it's practical and it works out well to do it on a pay-as-you-go, then you save the interest expense and you still get your work done. So it's really dependent upon what your facilities needs are. That makes that determination, not me.
Yeah, it makes sense. But we need to, have a conversation with our facilities.
Yeah, you over there, Bill? Okay.
Yes, I know, Barton Malo was invited to attend tonight. They weren't able to, but will be at our next meeting. And, Bill, you would know the most about when the last facilities assessment was done, if that's pretty much where we are now, or do we need to have another facilities assessment done and get we're good with the last one that was done? And then, yes, you want to, please, yes.
So maybe if I could use a microphone, or
Yes,
you guys can hear me.
I'll have a seat if you want.
Yeah,
Or-
that way I can ask some
Yep.
questions and share some thoughts. Obviously, we are so grateful to our community for providing a sinking fund for us. I don't know where we'd be. We've done a lot of improvements, but I do see some advantages to doing at least a partial. And so I would like some numbers, though, because I'm kind of stingy with the money. But there are certain things that are built out in our project that concern me, such as parking lots. We have some things that our administrative team have put into the Esser's grant that I'm hoping the state passes, such as a roof for the high school, perhaps our football field. And so we could take those things out of the sinking fund. But I really would love to have this meeting, and I would love some community buy-in and some board buy-in, because there are some things I think that we could do up front that would be really good to beautify our schools, to do for our students, to do for our teachers, and still, though, maintain some money, because I know what it's like when we don't have any money to fix it. I was here, well, forever, but but so I mean I would appreciate if the board would consider us having this meeting. And I was so happy what he said we could do, 75% or 50%, because then I'm on board. If he was going to take it all, whew, that's a hard one for me. But I really would like us to whatever you guys call them, study sessions. I'm a fix-it guy, so I just wanted to speak on that. I hope that I'm expressing what the community would want as well, but I really would like to see some things done right away for this district.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garland. Thank you. Dr. Weatherspoon, would it be possible for you and Mr. Roach and Mr. Garland to meet and kind of, Bill knows all our facilities and what is really needed now, get that information from him, toss numbers back at him, and then let's set a study session for the board, and we'll put notice of that so community members can attend and hear that information.
We need Barton Mallow to be a part of that discussion. And I think we need to bring update the assessment that Barton Mallow did. I know it's been done and it's in place, but not everybody is at the same starting point on it. So I think in this forum, we need Barton Mallow to present where we are.
Okay.
And then the study session would be convened in a manner which you would like to see it, but all the quote stakeholders absolutely should be, and we will ask if it be included. But I guess what Mr. Garland said is I need to emphasize one thing. If we were to have a winter storm that took off the roof of this building right now, we would be in an impossible situation. And if we had the funds to immediately address the problem, and it goes beyond things like the roof, it could be flooding because we have frozen pipes, etc. We want to get into the prevention mode as much as possible by maintaining. Our facilities are old. And so when you go through the facilities that are old, the first thing I look at is what's the heating system like? How old are the pipes in terms of water? What's the windows in terms of whether or not they're double pane with glass or gas in them, so we can have that insulation factor, all that nitty-gritty stuff that goes into keeping the building, say, secure. And then some of the other things in terms of what I noticed is, in view of the safety concerns, do we want to change some of our school safety procedures as related to construction or that can be funded out of sinking fund? And those things need to be discussed and presented to the board in a way that not to say we're not going to do what you promised to do, but to say here's the order of things we're going to address on a priority basis. And then, as Mr. Garland pointed out, the things for the outreach, we still have money to do that. But the bottom line is there are immediate needs because we have old facilities.
Yes, Mr. Garland.
Well, just one more thing, just so you guys are aware that Barton Mallow and IDS have reached out as requested, and we're going to schedule a meeting this week to do like a high-level discussion because most of the information that they received was from us, and they updated an earlier facilities, I forget what they're called, can't think of it right now, but we updated it, and so they asked to have another meeting this week, and then there is a sinking fund meeting, I believe, on the 8th, and obviously, if it's in the morning, but if a board member wanted to be a part of it, to hear some of the discussion, I know we've had board members in the past, and then after that, I would really love to be able to discuss some of the things with, community members, teaching, administrators, and so that everyone knows. And we have had discussions about making sure that we become our own press agents. I mean, we've done so many wonderful things, but so many people don't even know it unless you've been here. So those are some things we're looking at. And I just wanted to let you guys know that that ball is moving forward. It is rolling as you guys requested from them. So please, if you'd like an invite, please let the superintendent know. We'll have that meeting on I think it's the 8th, Monday the 8th, and then we can move. Tuesday the 8th? Mm-hmm. It is Tuesday, I think. Yeah, we quit our Mondays because we have our meeting then. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. Did you want the floor again?
So, Madam President,
Use your mic.
one of the things that also is that accompanies this, we have to pay insurance on our facilities. So there is a risk assessment that has to be done in terms of our rates, et cetera. So if we address our needs early, our risk assessment is improved. So that means we pay less money for insurance, et cetera. So everything kind of dovetails into one thing here. And we wanted to provide you with this information tonight as part of a larger assortment of things that go into the decision-making in terms of where we go as far as our financial plan is concerned.
Thank you. Next, we have student achievement status update. Will we be? Okay, so that's being put on the next agenda. Yes, that was the Bill Roach. Yes. Yeah, that was with the sinking fund discussion. Thank you. Thank you. So we are at number 10, communications consultant discussion. Dr. Weatherspoon, the floor is yours.
Madam Chair, I need to confer with members of the board to discuss this in broader terms as it relates to information, messaging, and the work that is being done internally. And this request is in conjunction with the Listen to Learn. Our messaging is missing the point in terms of some of the concerns of people who have raised several questions. Secondly, and as Mr. Garland has pointed out, the things that are being done are not being noted. Our presence in the media in terms of our webpage, etc., needs to be addressed differently. Our appeal to students who should and would like to attend our middle schools, the appeal has to change, and that they have to be able to see what we offer, how we offer it, and what the benefit is to them. And in a discussion later, we're going to be asking the board to consider returns to certain clubs that have been non-existent in the district. For example, the robotics club and other things like that. So all this builds on the need to communicate. And so with the failure of the previous motion, some of the stuff is not going to come together.
Thank you. Next, we have an action item, Assistant to the Superintendent, Sean McNatt. Is there a motion?
Recommended motion. Move that the Board of Education authorize interim superintendent Donald Weatherspoon to continue contract and otherwise work for former interim superintendent Sean McNatt.
There was a new one put in the resolution. The resolutions you have to see. No, I didn't get to it.
I'm sorry. Ramos Community Schools, resolution to continue temporary contract services of Sean McNatt. A special meeting of the Board of Education was held at Ramos High School within the boundaries of the district on the 31st day of January 2022 at 6 p.m. So, whereas Sean McNatt has served Ramos Community Schools recently in the capacity of interim superintendent and most recently has continued his employment with transition work after the hire of new interim superintendent, Dr. Donald Weatherspoon. And whereas interim superintendent Dr. Weatherspoon recommends and requests that Sean McNatt's employment continues as is through our next board meeting, which is scheduled for February 14, 2022. This will allow time for the RCS Board of Education, RCS Administration, and Mr. McNatt's legal team to review a proposed contract with an expiration date of June 30th, 2022. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the board hereby authorizes Sean McNatt to continue on with his employment under his current contract with a new expiration date of February 14, 2022, at which time a new contract will be considered. Am I reading?
No. Moved by Wester. Is there support?
Support, Kennard.
Moved by Wester, supported by Kennard. The floor is open.
When Dr. Weatherspoon came on, I wasn't here on the 10th. That first meeting, I was at a funeral. It was stated that we would have Mr. McNatt to the end of January for transition purposes. We're at the end of January. There should not be any more transition that really needs to be done at this point. And I'm sorry, The first time I heard Mr. McNatt talked more last week than he did the whole time he's been here as interim superintendent. And that's not to be nasty or anything, but that was the most I heard anything presented. We're paying a nice amount for an interim superintendent. And to have two at the same amount, we're looking at almost $2,000 a day. What we need to be talking about is doing our superintendent search. Because that process needs to get underway, because Dr. Weatherspoon's only here till June 30th. I don't agree with this. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Ms. Wester. Anyone else? Seeing none. All in favor of extending Mr. Sean McNatt's contract as is through February 14th, 2022, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. Nay. Motion fails.
Thank you.
Next, we have an update on the school resource officer, but Dr. Weatherspoon, if I may, I'm looking up bring back motions, and I just want to share with the board. A motion may be brought for reconsideration by a member of the prevailing side of the vote. So the motions that earlier failed, the law firm, Dr. Weatherspoon, got the information. It's $205 per hour. And that's compared to Keller Tome at $200 an hour, Miller Johnson at $240 an hour, and Troon at $250 an hour. So if there is a member of the prevailing side that wishes the board to reconsider that motion, we can do that. If not, we will move on. Is there a motion? Seeing none. Dr. Weatherspoon, your SRO update.
In your packets, Madam
Use your mic.
there is a breakdown of the salary of the school resource officer. The discussion that I've been hearing is that the district has historically paid 50% of that officer's salary. I don't find any, I haven't found any documentation that says that. But the cost of the $70,000 for the SRO came directly from the chief. And you see in your right-hand column there the breakdown of the SRO's salary plus the fringe benefits. And if we were to have a sworn officer, regardless of whether or not that individual worked for the Romulus Police Department or the Sheriff's Department, etc., the $70,000 figure would probably range in the $140,000+ range because of fringe benefits. As far as having an SRO in the district, it would be unwise to have a district to work without an SRO in today's environment. That person will be an integral part of the team dealing with the family resource centers, the attendance officers, the principals and assistant principals, etc. And from a school safety standpoint, I would think that it would be unwise to have a non-sworn person working in our schools, around our schools. We have not worked out what the distribution of that individual's time would be as far as middle school, high school, and elementary schools. But that individual will be a part of the planning team for within the district. The individual does work for the chief because that individual is a sworn officer. The one who has been identified to us, I don't know the individual's name, but this individual has worked in Romulus schools previously. And we have several things we need to discuss with law enforcement, and I would appreciate that the board consider this favorably.
Thank you, Dr. Weatherspoon. This was an update, not an action item. I know there were questions that were submitted. Do all board members have the information that was requested, or are there additional questions regarding this?
Madam President, so this is the thing. I do agree that we do need a school resource officer, and we have had in the past. There was a contract because it was brought before this board a couple times, and one was signed and the other one wasn't. But it was at 50%. We covered 50% of the cost, and that was one of the questions. Is it the same as previously presented to the board, where we were only responsible for paying 50%?
Thank you for that update. I think that the discussion about 50% is not really the object of, I mean, it may be a concern of people in the community, but the fact is we cannot hire someone for $70,000 and have them as a sworn person working in the district. So I've heard words saying that the district is being conned and all that other stuff. We are not. We've dealt directly with the chief, and these are true numbers. So it's kind of like an up or down situation as far as having a sworn officer in the district.
Thank you, Ms. Rowe. Next, we have communications from board members. Ms. Terrell.
I just, a couple of things. We have received several communications as board members concerning expenditures, also concerning our board stipend. We do receive $50 per event, and as far as I'm aware of, there isn't a cap. That was one of the questions that was asked to the entire board. It's my hope that at some point it would be understood the importance of transparency, because we do have a very active community that comes in, they voice their concerns, to have things presented in a manner which has people walking away saying, what was that about, or why is that taking place, is not the route that we need to continue to go. And especially when we have it from leaders. Trust does come from all sides, and I do believe that, I know that we run on the premise, or we're sitting here on the premise to serve children, to serve the community, our constituents, to serve our district employees. And if someone calls me or sends me an email or sends me a text message, I want to be able to answer that or answer whatever question is presented to me in an honest, fact-based way. And I just hope that we're able to get to that place so that no matter what takes place, honoring ethical positions, that we are able to do that. And I just also want to say that I appreciate everyone that has come out every meeting after every meeting in the midst of a pandemic to express their concerns. And I can't say it louder or to the point that it's understood that we have to hear what they're saying. Because if we don't, we shouldn't be here.
Thank you. Ms. Evans? Ms. Wester?
Just to piggyback off of my colleague, I agree with everything she said. I want to thank everyone for coming out and expressing your concerns week after week, month after month. It used to be bi-monthly, but it's week after week now. We've had a lot of additional transitions at central office. We've had administrative assistants leave, and we've had those that are there that have transitioned into others. We need to I think, have we posted for the HR assistant position, administrative assistant position yet? Just want to make sure that, we're making sure that when people call, that there's someone there to answer the phone and that can direct and make sure that questions are being answered. I know Mr. Scott is over in HR working working diligently to make sure he has assistants in there to get the job done. We have a person, he's doing things. He is retired, he could be gone, but he needs to have some assistance to get it done. HR is a hard job. You're making sure. Just making sure transparency. To get back on the same page, we all have to know what's going on. No more side tracks, no more side discussions, and coming to the table surprised. Not good. Not good. Having information ahead and conversations can make a lot of this go a lot smoother. And please, can we stop having special meetings week after week? Seriously. We need to get back at hand and make sure that we are doing what's right for our kids. Our teachers are here till 9, 10 o'clock at night and have to be back here in the next morning. Just want to make sure that we're doing things decent and in order. Decent and in order. Public comment. It's been so many changes with public comment. We had public comment for agenda items, and then we would have public comment at the end. We took away public comment before agenda items. We were back in December, November, and we moved it to the end. Now we bring it back, but then we still don't have it where they can comment after a presentation is done. We need to come to some consistency because it seems like it's only feasible when it's good for one person. It's easy to talk ahead of time, but Ms. Bell said it. She would love to speak after a presentation is made. We had that before we went through all this crazy debacle. And if we could get back to some of that to make sure that their voices are heard, it would be marvelous. They want to make sure they're heard. Thank you.
I have one thing. Thank you all for being with us. And today we went back in person, and I've heard great things from staff and students excited to be back in person. Dr. Weatherspoon, and I will follow up in an email, but could the board get an update on safety, student safety? One is there's been requests that the district post COVID cases and quarantines by building. I don't know if that is possible for us to do, but if so, there has been a request to have a more itemized breakdown and also have it updated more frequently than every week or every other week, if that's a possibility. The other is safety regarding our buildings. If we could get the plan when it was last updated for each building. I know Mr. McNatt was working on safety plans. If we could just get an update on where we are, the last updates, also an update on elementary doors that were mentioned in the meeting. I know Mr. McNatt was here for that. If we could get an update on the doors and our visitor policy and any other pertinent safety information that is in place, if the board could please, excuse me, get an update.
With regard to the COVID policy, we are closely following the guidelines provided by Wayne Grisa and the Department of Education. With regard to notices to the public in terms of cases that are recorded in the buildings, etc., we will provide that through our webpage as frequently as we can.
I just want to help Dr. Witherspoon out with this. We have our COVID dashboard, but our principals diligently send out letters every time there's a case reported in our buildings. And so that I don't know that our website does it have the capability to go by building by building? It would take much more time to get it up. So I know that I got a couple things for you. One, the CDC is now asking us to stop contract tracing. They're requesting that we stop it. And I don't know that that's what we should do, but I'm just saying. But I do know that our administrators are tasked with making sure that letters go out to parents every time. So I think maybe that community member isn't getting those letters, or maybe they don't have a district email or whatever. But I know that our administrators are being diligent and our teachers are being diligent in reporting these things. So I don't know that. I'm just throwing it out there. If that's adding another layer would help with someone going on the website and checking it. I'm just saying. I mean, it's getting a little difficult to give all these things. Is what I wanted to say. And I know Dr. Witherspoon. He's only been here for a while, so I wanted him to know that our team has been doing those things.
So, Madam President, members of the board, tomorrow morning will be my first time that I'll be meeting the building administrators, etc. And this is one of the items we're going to be discussing in terms of how frequently those letters go out and the content of those letters and what the impact is or what the operational impact is for different directives. And one of the things that is I'm sure is of concern to people is how frequently do the guidelines change? And that is confusing. So as we receive changes through the chain, meaning MDE, CDC, and Wayne Risa, we will bring that forward to the community and to the board, etc. And so we do not want to be out of step. Now, at the same time, we want to look out for the safety of the staff as well as the children where a case is reported. So the guidelines that as an example, we will not shut down a building if one child has a case that's reported test positive. But as Mr. Garland has pointed out, contract tracing is not part of the protocol for now. However, if someone knows of how that student has interacted with other kids, then we need to put that as part of our protocol in terms of how we advise the parents that, well, maybe you might need to have your child checked. The second thing is each home is eligible for a free COVID testing kit, and we have put up on our webpage where you can go and have it sent to you free of charge. Now, if you don't have a web page or web access, then there are other ways that we can get a kit to you, which we're going to try to discuss and make them available. You know, it would be my preference, for example, that if a family needs 5 test kits as opposed to 1, that we find a way to provide each family with 5 test kits. But we haven't worked that through because we haven't had a chance to talk about it. And going back to what I said earlier, changes occur rapidly. So we have to be in a position to respond rapidly. The second question is with regard to the safety plan. Mr. McNatt was in the process of reviewing it for me, and we're going to figure out what the updates are going to be, including some of the training requirements, etc. That project is now on hold, and I have to figure out where we're going to, how we're going to meet that need. In terms of visitor policy and things like that, in terms of what you mentioned, I'm going to be reinforcing with all personnel, as I have with the division directors this morning. No one is to enter our buildings without following the proper protocol. If you don't stop by the principal's desk and get permission to be in the building, you will be reported to the central office, and if the person persists, I'll get a no trespass order. We cannot put these children at risk for anything, for anyone, for any purpose, and that is, well, that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, we are at a time where we don't know what the motivation is for people to come into our buildings and for a purpose. If you cannot express that purpose to the building administrator and be recorded in and specify why you're there, you will be escorted off the property.
Thank you. And that is all. So motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Meeting adjourned at